Who knows Richard Rosenow from LinkedIn? Who's connected to Richard Rosenow on LinkedIn? Okay, if you're not connected to Richard Rosenow on LinkedIn, or you don't follow him on LinkedIn, do that. He puts some really fascinating information around our space and drives conversation on lots of things. He's also the tallest person in people analytics. I'm not going to stand next to him too many times during the next 2 days. And Richard has been desperate to come to this conference for 10 years, but he's finally going to make his debut now at People Analytics World. Richard's been a practitioner. He's worked at companies including Uber, Nike, Facebook when it was Facebook, before it was Meta, and others. And he's now the VP of People Analytics Strategy at OneModel. Did I get that right? Fantastic. So welcome, a big welcome to Richard.
Thank you, everybody. Good morning, London. Hey, another round of applause for David. We didn't get to give him one there. Just thank you. 10 years, too. Thank you. And a huge thank you to Barry. 10 years running for People Analytics World London. This is incredible. I've been dying to come to this conference. I've been watching it from afar for 10 years. And just it's incredible to see this grow and grow and grow. And it's great to see you all this morning. So let's dive in. Today, we're going to talk about reaching upstream and evolutions of the People Analytics function. This is a wonderfully indulgent. I've got my People Analytics people here. This is about the People Analytics function. You can't get better than that. So it's going to be a fun conversation today. But let's dive in first. What is People Analytics? I would charge all of the speakers today to share. What is People Analytics? And this is an interesting question, mainly because People Analytics is a lot of things. I love this quote. Do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I contain multitudes. I think People Analytics as a definition contains multitudes. We've got a lot of different things out there, and this is both helpful and harmful. There's some different kind of opportunities here for us. But I'm going to share 3, because I really think breaking it down into 3 is more helpful than 1. What we're going to talk about is 1, a community. We're going to talk about the function, and we're going to talk about the act. And these are 3 things I love about this space. So the community, that's what keeps me involved. I think that's what's kept a lot of you involved. It's what got a lot of you here, is really that movement of people that's really driving the business around data and excited about how do we make work better. I think about the act then. The act is something we all have to do. Everybody in the business has to do the act of People Analytics. That's true for managers, that's true for leaders, that's true for HR. We are all participating in the act. The act has been around for a very long time. You go back to the 40s, you see people making decisions with data about the workforce. That's the real history of the space. This center one, though, as a function, this business unit of People Analytics, this grouping that's started to formalize and say, okay, we've got this group. They are the People Analytics people. Their job titles are related to People Analytics. That's been around for about 15 years. I would really peg that to Jeremy Shapiro, Tom Davenport. They had that article, Competing on Talent Analytics, HBR, 2010. Funny enough, competing on talent analytics, not people analytics. So there's some interesting evolutions there too. But really as a function, we've been around 15 years. And some of these things, just even on this slide, are contradictory. And there's some positive things there too. We've really been able to develop decentralized. We don't have like a FINRA. We don't have a central organizing body that says this is exactly what it is, do not deviate, because we're still growing, we're still evolving. And I would like to say, give yourself some grace on that. That's going to be kind of a common theme throughout the presentation, is as we're still evolving, as we're still designing, don't feel like there's a way to do this. There's a very specific thing you must do to accomplish People Analytics. If you're doing something a little bit different, you actually might be driving this forward. So keep that in mind throughout the presentation here today. So we'll talk a little bit about Richard. I'm Richard. It's good to meet y'all. A little bit of my background. So I got my start actually in nonprofit and some HR roles. Quickly, though, found my love of People Analytics, came over to this space, found my home. So I joined the Facebook team when they were about 15 people. I got to see that grow to about 150 just on People Analytics. I think they peaked around 300 on their People Analytics team, a separate 100 people on People Data Engineering. It was really an experience to kind of see what was going on over there. But I said, hey, there's got to be another way to do this. Not everybody has a 50% profit margin. Not everyone's able to accomplish this. Like, how does this happen other places? And that's what took me to Uber, Nike, and Argo AI, other places, to kind of see, like, how do we do this at scale? How do we push this out? How do we accomplish this without 80 PhDs on the team? How can we accomplish People Analytics? And really, my career has been based around data democratization, platforms. At Nike, I was a buyer of OneModel, Argo AI. I ran HR tech and People Analytics. Actually got that team up and running. That was a self-driving car company in Pittsburgh. They were doing great until they ran out of money. It's not my fault, though. Clearly, I didn't get enough budget from that, but they had budget to spare. But it was good timing when they ran out of money, because I came over here to OneModel. So OneModel, we're a People Analytics tech platform. We enable, support HR teams and People Analytics teams to scale, grow, and develop confidence in their HR data. We stretch from extraction to storytelling to data science. But OneModel's downstairs. We've got a booth down there. We've got phenomenal people. We're giving a demo at 11. I'm not going to talk about OneModel in the presentation today because we've got plenty of time to talk about that. What I am going to talk about is how thankful I am to be at OneModel because they've enabled me to go do research and talk to friends and learn about this space. So my role at OneModel, I'm the VP of People Analytics Strategy. I've got analytics and strategy in my title. My MBA program is very proud of that. But the reality is that job's very open. I get to do a lot of different things. So I work horizontally across the company. I provide a lot of advice as a practitioner. But I also get to be out in the community developing on LinkedIn. If we're not connected, let's get connected. I got the QR code in the corner there. But I also get to do research. And I get to learn about the space. So even in the past year, I think I went through at the end of the year and I coded my calendar as we all do. And I said, okay, what did I get up to this past year? And I talked to probably 300 different companies about what's going on in people analytics. And the real benefit of being at OneModel is I get to hear about the problems. You come to the conferences, you're going to hear about everybody's best day. You're going to hear about phenomenal case studies. But we are all experiencing some problems. And so I love that. So if you've got people analytics problems, come talk to me. I would love to hear about it. Add that to the research, but also hopefully give you some advice back or connect you to somebody who can help you out. But let's talk about this today. Let's talk about some problems. So I would love to hear from the room, what are some common challenges people analytics teams face? And I know a lot of you know these. So this is a moment, I want to hear from some. I don't have Menti, I don't have a fancy poll, but let's hear some. Let's shout some out.
No budget.
No budget.
Data-driven mindset.
Say it one more time.
Data-driven mindset.
Not a data-driven mindset in the business, absolutely.
Data quality.
Data quality. This should be cathartic. This is our people here. Let's get some yelling. Perfect. We'll dive into a couple here. So here's some ones we hear. I don't have access to my data. The work I'm delivering is not used. I don't know what work is needed. I can't get investment. I can't convince, you name it, you name the team. And my peers are resistant to change. This is tough. I know I'm starting on a dark note. It's the first kind of kickoff here. But okay, so here, there's a tough message here. What we're finding is I am disconnected. And this is tough, but I would also say, coming back to that first slide, let's think about grace. Let's give ourselves a moment here. We've been around 15 years. A lot of our teams have been around 1 or 2 years. But let's take a second and say, okay, what would happen if I was more connected? How could I actually get better connected to my company? And we've really been focusing our research around that space, and I've got some things to share with you today. So how do we get teams connected? First off, we got people analytics. We've got the use of data to support workforce decisions. That's where we start. But really the first thing we see teams do when they kind of get going, they start establishing themselves, they start to reach upstream, and they say, hey, I actually need data. And you can do pretty well with the data you have. So an initial people analytics team, you might have like a couple data sets someone shared. You might do first-party data generation with Qualtrics. But eventually you run out of that like initial data set. You say, hey, I've got to reach upstream. I've got to fix something. Some of this data might not be architected. It might not be available. I've got to go tweak things. And suddenly we go from being consultants and strategists and analytics professionals into data engineers. And that's an evolution we see a lot of teams start to go down the path of. But inevitably that leads back to technology. You need well-implemented technology to get good data to do people analytics. And the longer we've seen people analytics teams play in this space, the further they reach up, they start saying, hey, actually, this data's fine, because data's not wrong. Data just represents what it represents. Turns out Workday's wrong. So let's reach up further. Let's make those tweaks. Let's make those changes. We've got to get this flowing through correctly. Or maybe this technology was never set up properly in the first place, and suddenly now I'm a technologist. I've got to actually reach into these different systems, and I've got to set things up and make things work. Inevitably, let's go further. The reality is the operation is never documented. The operation's not been set up properly. We see this where like recruiters, they might be doing random things. And if a recruiter's doing random things, your ATS doesn't stand a chance. It doesn't matter how well it was set up. It's not going to actually capture what they're doing. That data's going to flow through poorly. We're not going to be able to do our analytics at the very bottom. And ultimately, at the very top, it comes down to strategy. If we don't decide what we're going to do and what we're going to do well, how does the operation know what to build? How do we set up our tech? How do we get our data out? And how do we do analytics? And what we're seeing is this is quite a flow. We're seeing this flow top to bottom, and then we're seeing a bit of a flow bottom to top. So right off the bat, this is what we're calling the people data supply chain. And this is something, when I shared this with people analytics leaders, and I've tested this with a lot of folk out there, they say, yes, that's the pain I've been feeling. As a people analytics leader, I am tasked with doing data science in the business. I am asked to go accomplish data-driven results, but it turns out that I'm actually asked to do a lot of other things upstream. And I've got to make tweaks and I've got to make changes. So we've got some research on this. I'm going to share some different insights we found so far. But let's kick off with an example. So I want to know what causes turnover. We've all gotten that question. That's a lot of the kind of early questions people analytics teams tackle. They want to get involved in attrition. But it turns out we've got raw turnover data, and we've got to turn that into an analytical model. We've got to make that transactional data feed. We've got to find a way to actually do trending reports on that. But it turns out if you go up a little further, that turnover first has to be encoded into an HRIS. And I use that word encoded. We've been talking a lot about that lately. That phrase of kind of like, how do we take a operation, wrap it in technology, and once it's been wrapped in technology, then the data can come out. A lot of the stuff in HR has not been encoded. So whatever process we're working on, whatever technique that's happening across the business, we've got to encode it before we can get the data back out again. But the turnover has to be reported. If it's not reported somewhere, if it doesn't get a chance to get encoded, we actually can't do the analysis. And at that moment of operational reporting, when that HR ops team or maybe a member of a team is kind of entering the data into your system, they make a lot of decisions there that actually have a lot of impact later in our analytics journey. They choose why the person quit. They might have asked kind of an exit survey. And that is fraught with issues and errors. And a lot of us have had to do a lot of data cleanup earlier, but that early operation stage has a massive impact on us as a people analytics team. And lastly, the choices that are made around the employee experience. So at some point, your company has chosen, we are going to invest in this space or we are not going to invest in this space. Whatever choices were made or not made flow directly into the other parts here to help us understand why and what happens with turnover. So this people data supply chain in action. We've got some implications from this. So as we've been floating this around, as we've been talking to teams about this and kind of reviewing to understand like, hey, what are you feeling when we talk about this people data supply chain? The first one we see is that the sequence matters. It turns out, and this might be true in business, we have pretty good visibility above us, and we have very bad visibility below us. So that tech team knows what's going on in the ops team, and they rarely understand what's happening in analytics. Same thing with the ops team. They know what's going on with the strategy. They talk to their strategy partners. They might not understand technology that well. There's a flow from top to bottom, and that flow between really matters when you're talking about the different incentives of these different teams. Disconnecting these functions creates problems. We've got this quote from Stacey Harris. This is one of my favorites. Sapient Insights, she did the 2024 People Tech Survey. If IT leads HRIS, then HR is 60% more likely to be viewed as a compliance function. It's a powerful one. But what it's saying there is if we take HR tech and we plop that into a different function, suddenly you start to break up this supply chain. And when this supply chain is broken, we introduce a lot of friction. We introduce a lot of politics across. It's people problems all the way down. A lot of times we think we might have data problems, we might have analytics problems. The reality is we can do data science. We have data scientists that are very good at doing all this different work. We have statisticians. The problem we run into is a people problem that started a lot earlier that then flowed the whole way through that system. And lastly, this is very true. I'm sure our practitioners are feeling this in the audience. We inherit their problems. This just keeps going. It gets bigger as it goes. But that puts us in a really unique position. We're going to talk more about that. Just because we can't get through a presentation without talking about generative AI. What does this mean for generative AI? I've got bad news. It turns out that to do AI well, you have to have a standardized operation. You have to have your tech set up properly. You've got to get access to your data. This is why it's hard to do AI in HR. It's not because we've got a different domain and different things that are happening here. It's true that we just haven't gotten this investment that we've been demanding for 10 years across people analytics. So for my people analytics practitioners out there, use this, leverage this. Say, hey, you want to do your generative AI project? Clean up your data. We've got to get this going. But truly, it's a major blocker for a lot of teams that they've not actually established some of these earlier steps in the sequence. Okay, I got another fun one for you. And I promise I'll bring this back. But how many different job titles are there in people analytics? Let's hear this one. While you're thinking about that, so we run a job board on our OneModel website. I pull down US, UK, Australia, Canada. You'll notice those are all English-speaking countries. I'm working on my other languages, but we'll get there. But across those different areas, over the past year, how many different job titles are there? I want to hear a couple examples, a couple guesses. 125. The limit does not exist. I appreciate that. We got a couple. We got 14 million. Okay, we got a high end, we got a low end. Let's dive in. So we've been tracking almost 4,000 postings since 2023. That's just total postings across these different areas. 2,600 unique titles. 2,200 I've never seen again. This is wild. If you take one thing away, it's stop making up new titles. Please stop making up new titles. This is why it's hard to find a job. This is why it's hard to find talent. Our market is really disrupted with this. We've got workforce analytics, people analytics, talent analytics, colleague insights, you name it. There are so many variations of this word. This has been an eye-opener, just doing this for the past year, just seeing across these different areas and pulling these insights out of this kind of job title mess. It's been interesting. It's been exciting, though, and we've had a ton of fun doing it. But with that, we've actually started to pull out some other insights about kind of what's happening in the function. Because as we looked at those job titles, as we looked at all the job descriptions, we started to see a trend within that. So let's take a look at, we've got our kind of CHRO, we've got our typical verticals. We've got our talent acquisition, talent, total rewards, different like the business that operates across those program areas. It turns out we bring that people data supply chain back in. These are our horizontals. These are the sub-functions of HR that are like horizontally across the business. That we said, okay, instead of all of you doing your own HR tech, let's actually centralize that. Instead of all of you doing your own analytics, let's centralize that. And let's have a horizontal across the HR team. What we've been finding is that there's an extra role in here. And this was a bit of a surprise because we started poking around, we started seeing the titles. As we're learning about the titles, I have put a placeholder in there. Please do not crucify me for the name of that. I know that's going to be the most political part of this is what do we actually call that title? But there's somebody sitting between these horizontals and the head of HR. And they've got wild titles. They've got these 60-character, the VP of HR Ops, Insights and Strategy, the VP of People Services. I saw a VP of Mosaic, which was, let's see if I can get it, Mergers, Operations, Analytics, Insights, Systems, and Comp. And it turns out that when you have a VP of Mosaic, you don't have any peers. Because you can't find your peers in this space. But the reality, as we started looking across these areas, we say, hey, there's actually a sub-function hiding here. So if we looked at what happened with comp and benefits, over time, those came together to be total rewards, and we have that umbrella function. This actually exists today. So this is not something that I'm recommending or something that a consulting group says, you should try this new method. We're actually finding this everywhere. And I think after you started looking for it, you're going to see it a lot of places too. This is a pretty quick search for different people, different teams. I'm sure we actually have some of these teams in the room, and a number of people here have spoken to me about this. We've interviewed a couple dozen people actually now that are in this job, and they are all surprised that somebody else is doing the job. What they did is they started out maybe as a people analytics leader, and they kind of picked up HR tech when somebody left, and they picked up HR ops maybe later, or maybe they're an HR ops leader that got tasked with doing some of these things. And these roles have started to come together, but there's something here that there's a natural gravity to these spaces, and we really see that as the supply chain. Managing that people data supply chain is critical. I've got some examples, and it's a little tiny font, but I called out the big parts here. So Discord, Senior Director of People Technology Ops. You wouldn't expect that to be a people analytics job, but they are in, do we have the Discord person here? I saw some people pointing, oh no, okay. Establish the people analytics strategy. This is the people analytics leader at Discord. But their title would not represent that. You would not think this is a people analytics job. Got another example, Zoox, self-driving car company, Director of HRIS and People Operations. They are supposed to drive the discipline and metrics, drive the HR analytics strategy, lead the implementation of a data-driven talent strategy. They are in charge of people analytics. This is the people analytics leader. We took a look at our 75 open roles. So this is at the Director Plus level. This was taken a couple weeks ago. But of those 75 open roles in people analytics at the Director Plus level, only 15 were pure play people analytics. The rest of them were a plus. We saw people analytics in tech and people analytics in ops and people analytics in ops strategy tech, you name it. More often than not, these roles are actually including more. And I think in the past, we felt a little bad about that. We've like, well, I want to be people analytics. I want to report straight to the head of HR. The reality is we're seeing a market shift around this. And we're seeing an evolution of this function where we're seeing this new sub-function pop in, where a lot of these are being brought together. So here's some early feedback. Like I said, we've had a couple dozen interviews now. We've been talking to people about this space, and we've been interviewing these leaders that are in this role. Dramatic reduction in politics. So this is probably the biggest one, is that when I have my HR tech leader and I are peers reporting to the CHRO, we've got to fight with each other. We've got to figure this out together, because that CHRO's job is not to manage us. Their job is to manage up and to manage across the C-suite, but they are not necessarily there to manage our sub-functions and make sure we work well together. So when we see this kind of people analytics, this workforce systems leader over top of these roles, we see a dramatic reduction in politics. We're able to better navigate, better move across. A viable and at times preferable alternative to reporting to the CHRO. I really want to put this out there because at the end of the day, like I said, a lot of times we're feeling bad about this. We're like, I wish I could report there. All of HR's children want to report to the head of HR. That's just the nature of it. I talked to someone yesterday that had they were advocating for a chief payroll officer. And that chief payroll officer will report to the CEO. And it's like, we all have big ambitions. We all want to report higher. But the truth of the matter, if we're going to work together as a function, if we're going to accomplish business goals as a function, not necessarily the act or the kind of the community, but as a function, where do we sit? How do we accomplish things? We've got to work together. And we've got to be able to work across our organization. This is a big one. One of the strangest things about this is not getting picked up by surveys. So there was somebody I talked to, one of these workforce systems leaders. They were ahead of people analytics. They had then picked up tech, picked up ops, picked up a PMO. They managed the strategy across, and we had a great interview. And at the end of each interview, I asked every one of the leaders a couple questions about the space. But one of the questions I asked was, where should people analytics report within an organization? And I thought this was going to be a softball. I'd collect like a quick quip that I could add to a white paper later. And they said, people analytics must report to the CHRO. I said, my friend, it doesn't report to the CHRO in your organization. But what had happened was they still saw themselves as the head of people analytics. And they said, yes, it does. It reports to the CHRO in my organization. But the reality was their job had gotten so much bigger. They had picked up so many other areas. So I'd like to do a poll of the room here. And I had to write this down because I wanted to get really, really precise about the question. So for the practitioners in the room, could you raise your hand again? I'd love to just see my room of practitioners here. I love that too, by the way, just how many practitioners we got. So I've got a question for you, and I'm going to try to be precise. So speaking on behalf of the most senior leader you report to who is not the CHRO, please raise your hand for the following. And this might be you. If you're reporting to the CHRO, this might be you. My downline organization includes people analytics. Should be most of the people, the practitioners here. Okay. My downline organization includes people data engineering. Got a lot of hands for that one. My downline organization includes people tech. It's more hands than you might expect. My downline organization includes people ops. We got quite a handful. My downline organization includes people strategy or PMO. Love that. My downline organization includes other functions outside of those. A lot more function. And my downline organization includes compensation. Just want to test that one. We got a couple. Comp seems to attract people analytics. There's a lot of nerdy friendliness between those two orgs. There's something else going on there, so more to come on that one. But I appreciate that, because the interesting thing about that is if we ask a question, we say, where does people analytics sit in your organization? The answer we get in a lot of those surveys is, oh, it reports to the CHRO. Because I do, and I lead people analytics. I also lead all of these other organizations, but you asked me a very specific question. So that's where what's been interesting here with this interview approach is we're starting to get into a bit of a deeper understanding of these different functions. This last one, I want to really highlight this one. There is an excellent career path here for people analytics leaders. Because we're at the bottom of this supply chain, we actually see what's going on. We see the issues with tech, we see the issues with ops, we see the issues with strategy. And for a long time, the head of people analytics had to move. If you wanted to move up in an organization, you kind of got to that top head of people analytics job, you're like, okay, if I want to get paid more, I got to go to the next biggest company up and I got to start over. The reality we're starting to see is that people analytics leaders are primed to take on this overall role due to the unique nature of what we pick up and what we learn and how we see across the organization. People analytics leaders are really natural workforce systems leaders. And so we're trying to better define this. We're trying to call this out a little bit more to make it more of a career path because I'm very excited for people analytics leaders to step into this space. Big takeaway though. Another one of the questions I asked everybody in interviews was, would you go back to a pure play people analytics role? Across the board, everyone said no. They said, I can do so much better people analytics work here. I have more control over my outcomes. I can understand my organization better, and I have the political support I need to actually get things done. I would never go back. And to me, that's telling. There's something happening here when it comes to people analytics and the evolution of the function that's important to share. So as the last one, if we think about these workforce systems leader, the unique thing about this is we actually control a lot of the pieces of the employee experience. We keep talking about analytics to action. We keep trying to make people analytics teams take action. The reality is, as a people analytics team, we can support decision making. We don't have the tools to actually drive decisions in a lot of cases, but this workforce systems leader does. When you have operations, when you have tech, when you have strategy, and you have the analytics team, you can actually make a change in your business. And if you talk about who's going to run Gen AI for HR, that's this leader right here. Because otherwise it gets distributed across, or the people analytics leader, we get saddled with it. But the reality is generative AI, a lot of it's RPA, a lot of it's other parts of the business. It's got to be applied across. There's a really natural fit here for the workforce systems leaders. So which one is right between these? It depends. Of course it depends. We're not doing science on this yet. Like, who here's done org chart science? It's not happening. I would love it if it did. We're going to get there someday. But the reality is we are still young. We're 15 years old as a function. It depends. And at the end of the day, like, there's a really good option here with this workforce systems leader. There's also a really good option when you report directly to the CHRO. So again, no matter where you sit within the organization, if you're doing good people analytics work, give yourself a pat on the back, keep driving things forward. And again, give yourself some grace, give each other some grace about this, because there are so many ways to get this work done. So I'll give you some big takeaways here from across this research. First one, be kind. Be kind to each other. We're still learning. Make sure you're sharing, be open, talk to your community, get involved with your community. Consider this people data supply chain. I would love to hear from you about this. If this clicked something for you, come find me downstairs. I'll be at our booth most of the day, and I'll be hanging around the conference and just excited to talk to you all about this nonstop. And this last one, this workforce systems leader has advantages. And this is an actual role. So I've started to get some quarterly calls together with these folk, and they are as surprised as each other to find each other and just to start talking to each other about this space. And so if you're a workforce systems leader in the room, if you cover a couple functions and you'd like to meet some peers in the space, come find me too. I'd love to get you connected and start to learn a little bit more from each other about this. Okay, that's me. Find me on LinkedIn. We also have a wonderful blog with all the different people from OneModel. We have a number of different people and analytics practitioners within the company who are writing phenomenal content in the space. If you were excited about what we talked about today, the white paper is still in the works. But we did talk about this a little bit on our 2024 predictions webinar, so I've got a little bit in there. If you're like, I need to send this to my CHRO right now because I need a promotion, I need a new job title, that's the place to go to find out more about that. But I'm also always happy to advocate on your behalf. Thank you all for coming today, and I can't wait to talk to you about this.